honestly tell you about what's going on in your body without modern medicine, without an x-ray, without an MRI, without, well, that was incredulous to me at that time.
Welcome to the Wisdom of the Body podcast. I'm your host, Heather Grzych. Here, we talk about the profound connection between mind, body, and spirit. Join me and other authors, wellness experts, and everyday individuals talk about the importance of listening to our bodies, trusting our guts, and living in deeper harmony with nature. So, whether you're seeking guidance on your wellness journey or simply looking for inspiration, you're in the right place. We're thrilled to be in the top 3% of podcasts globally. You can find the Wisdom of the Body podcast on Apple, Spotify, and most other places where people listen to podcasts. You can follow by joining my email list at heathergrzych.com or by following me on Instagram at Heather Grzych. That's Heather, Grzych. I know you're going to love this podcast, so take a second right now to subscribe. Today, I'm here with Jill Pepper, CEO at Ozer Health. With over 18 years in healthcare and employer wellness solutions, Jill has extensive experience in Western group insurance for large employer groups, wellness program sales, retention, and strategic distribution. She previously served in leadership roles and managed key relationships with employer groups, focusing on traditional Western insurance, wellness programs, strategy and engagement, and customer relationship management. For the past 15 months, Jill has directed her expertise toward launching the Ozer Health app, a digital platform aimed at delivering an accessible, holistic health solution that marries Western and Eastern practices. Her background also includes consulting services and advisory roles, such as her contributions to Impact 100 Nashville Board, where she continues to engage with healthcare innovation and community health initiatives. Now, first of all, Jill, thank you so much for being with us here today on the Wisdom of the Body podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me. I am absolutely thrilled.
Yeah. So I'm sure there's more that we have in common, but there's at least two things that you and I have in common. Well, other than the fact that you also have very thick, long brown hair like me. So there's at least three things I know. All right. So we have at least two things in common. One is a background working in the mainstream health insurance space. And the other is experience in the Ayurvedic field. Before I met you, I didn't think there was anybody else out there like this. Now, I'm clearly wrong. And if there's anybody else listening to this podcast right now who also has that kind of strange combination of experience, can you please email me through my website or reach out to me on social media? Because clearly I'm wrong and I don't know what's going on in the world.
We could start a support group. So.
Yeah, totally. Okay. So I can't wait to talk with you, because I worked in the health insurance space for a long time, in different role than you've focused on. And I'm super fascinated by your journey and your interest in Ayurveda, because I know that it's really not something a lot of Americans who are not Indian are very familiar with. Right. Or super into yoga. People who are into yoga know about it. People who are from Indian background. Okay. So how did you go personally from leading a team at an insurance carrier, which is completely focused? Well, generally, there's a little bit of change happening there, but generally very focused on Western medicine, allopathic medicine, which we might call it, or conventional medicine, to co-founding a company that focuses on Ayurveda and Western medicine together.
Yeah, it was an interesting journey. And I will say I have come to truly believe the universe has put me through the past experiences that I have had, especially in my work, but also personal, to get me to where I am, to sort of push me for those last 15 months to do what we've done. So prior to the healthcare industry position, I actually also worked for a marketing communication firm. And in it, we created a wellness program that was sort of the more traditional, count your steps, eat standard advised nutrition kind of program. And so even prior to the healthcare industry, I had a lot of experience in the wellness industry. which is why I got hired into the company with the insurance side of it, because they were recognizing that they needed to do something from a preventative perspective, and they needed somebody who had some experience from a strategic perspective to help large employers get their employees engaged, which is not an easy thing to do, especially in the US. We don't like change. So I spent a ton of time there, served a lot of different roles at that company, which was a phenomenal company. I've got no bad things to say about it or Western medicine, which I do think gives me a little bit of a unique perspective on this. Ended up at the very end leading the state in group commercial. So I got a very broad view of the insurance side of the house from a carrier perspective, for sure. That company decided in February of 2023 to move away from group commercial, which is what I was leading for the state. And I was blessed to be one of the very few small team that was asked to be a leader to wind it completely down. I was their large group expert. And so our large groups, for the most part, left at the end of 2023. And so I wrapped up with them early of 2024. But I had a very long lead time in the year of 2023 to try and figure out what it was I wanted to do next. And so outside of my career, about 7 years ago, I was having some issues with my hips. And so I had a very trusted friend who happened to be a broker of mine say, you got to go see this guy, which I didn't want to do. But he was a good broker. And so
let's tell everybody what a broker is, because we know what a broker is, but the average American doesn't even know what a broker for insurance is, right?
Yeah. And you know what? Correct me the whole way through, because in insurance, we have all kinds of acronyms.
Jargon.
Yeah, jargon, absolutely. We're the worst. So the broker for me was sort of my lifeblood. It was the person who owned the relationships with our actual clients and would bring them to me. So, I never did it falsely. A lot of them are quite good friends, but that was not somebody you really wanted to make mad necessarily.
Because they have the relationships with the employers.
Exactly.
And they're helping them get their employee benefits set up.
That's exactly right. And this happened to be a really good friend. And I did trust him, but he said things like, you really have to go see this guy. He's got my dad over cancer. And let me just be really clear. I might be the most corporate-minded human on earth. So when he said that, I just didn't believe it. I just did it. I'm very Western medicine based. That's my knowledge and that's my trust level.
Yeah. But you trusted this person. Do you know how that person found Ayurveda?
The broker, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So his dad actually started it when he had cancer and had been seeing this person that I went to go see for decades and had gotten over cancer and lived honestly to a very
kind of makes you wonder how that broker, I think it was a guy you said.
It was a guy,
yeah. How did he find him? Like the dad find him, how did
I don't know how the dad did.
I'm curious. No, because referrals are so important, right?
Right.
With healers.
Absolutely. 100%. And that's interesting. So remind me to come back to that here in a moment. But because it's part of the reason that motivated me, in all honesty. So I went to see this guy, but I told the broker, again, I'm a skeptic to no end. Like I'm very data driven. And so you don't tell him my last name. You don't tell him how you know me. You don't first name, the end. He was like, he doesn't care anyway, which now I know is true. But at the time, I just didn't want a magic trick, right?
Yeah.
So I go into this building down on Music Row in Nashville, right? It's a old, looked like a ballet room. The guy could not see where I had parked. At the time, I had a little bit of a limp because I had had previous back surgeries, which a broker didn't even know. But I had a little bit of a limp from that, which I think is what ultimately got my hips, which is why I was going to see him. I had hip pain. Couldn't see where I parked, couldn't see me walk up. This is what I'm thinking in my head. I'm so skeptical that I don't want him to be able to have any ability to assess, right?
Right, because you think you're doing something very weird. That's what I'm hearing.
Something very weird. So outside of my comfort zone. So I go up these stairs, I walk in the door, the guy introduces himself, didn't ask me anything about me, asked me to take my shoes off and lay on this mat. There was a mat that was like a 3-inch mat on the floor. And I was going, oh my goodness, what have I got? What am I doing? So I didn't really have to walk to get to the mat. So there was no assessment of my gait. I laid down and he came on and knelt to my right side and took my wrist. And I'm thinking, what are we doing? Like, what on earth? I'm here to see for my hips. He hasn't asked me a question and now he's taking my pulse. All right. So he said, a bit of a skeptic. And I went, yeah. I mean, like, what did you say to that? I was trying not to be rude. And he said, what if I can tell you what you had for dinner last night? And so I said, well, give it a shot. Not kidding, down to the type of cheese that I had this weird mango pineapple something drink exactly. And I had it at home. That's how bad my brain was going. Like, I wasn't even eating in a restaurant. There's no way. So I said, you have my attention. Because how does he know that? He never came off my wrist and literally told me, you've got nerve damage in your right foot in the pinky toe and the one next to it. You've had multiple back surgeries. You've got like head to toe things that the broker did not even know. So there was no way. I'm not a social media poster. No possible way he knew some of the stuff that he was saying, which still, I'll be honest, sort of felt like a magic trick because I don't think at the time I got the full implication of what some folks can actually tell you about what's going on in your body without modern medicine, without an x-ray, without an MRI, without, that was incredulous to me at that time. And so he even said, you have some anger built up about a male that has died. Wasn't a romantic relationship, maybe your dad or brother. And so, again, my logic brain's like, I had no anger when my dad died. My brothers are still alive. And so I went, that doesn't resonate. Like, he's wrong. Mm-hmm. I was driving home and it hit me. I know who he was talking about. And I did have some anger about a very good friend of mine. But at the time, I guess because he said dad and brother, it didn't register to me. So that whole first meeting was, I still at times look at it and sort of, I'm not sure I fully process still how someone can know so much about you without the modern medicine that I'm very accustomed to and all of its tests. So I saw him for a few months. Life happened. He went on a learning retreat type thing. And so we just sort of, I just stopped seeing him for a bit. COVID hit. My mom, who is a Spitfire and at the time was 84, got COVID. She was in the hospital for 21 days. She was in ICU for 8 days. I am her medical power of attorney. It was the most stressful time I've ever had in my life. I'm a multitasker. I can remember my director who was trying to do my job texting me and me looking at the phone and going, I don't even know what those words mean. It was that stressful. So she came back here, recovered at my house for 68 days. It was arduous, but she is tougher than nails. She's now about to turn 90 in a few months and thriving. She lives at home. She drives. You wouldn't get anywhere close to her age if you had to guess. Once she went home and was 100%, I couldn't let it go. I do not want to be disrespectful to anyone who has PTSD, but I lightly use to describe what I was feeling. It just felt like I was still in the middle waiting for someone to ring me to ask if they could intubate her in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And I was trying everything I knew because I knew I could feel it. I was off and I just couldn't shake it. And so my husband actually one day said, I think you need to call that guy. And I thought, why not? Because I've tried everything else, right? So he came, we did a session, and literally in one session, and he does something called Bindu Chikitsa, which is sort of a mix of Marma and all kinds of things, acupressure, all kinds of things. One session.
Chikitsa means therapy for anybody who's like not
Sorry.
familiar with the lingo. No, but most people don't know that term.
I now have insurance lingo and Ayurveda. You can't understand anything I'm saying. Yeah. So we did one session and I literally walked out of that room and went, I'm back. Like, I'm light. I am optimistic again. So from that point forward, I actually started seeing him and doing sessions every 2 weeks, almost like a religion. At one point, sort of fought back and said, I feel like I'm taking advantage here. I don't think, and I said, you don't understand. Some women get their nails done. I had a very high pressure, high stress, high responsibility job. That was my stress relief. That was the time that I took to focus inward on me and was seeing crazy, amazing results. That knot that I think maybe every leader I know has in their gut when they know how to speak correctly to make HR happy, but they have super high expectations for the people that work for them and they just go crazy all day, was gone. Like my peace and my happiness and the things that were generated from that in a positive way was documentable. Like I could have written a book off of what was occurring. So all of that sort of occurred. And then my company decided to move away from what I was in charge of. And so I counseled with some folks that knew me really well because my background's pretty varied and looks a little schizophrenic. I built houses for a while. It's all project management, but I could have gone in a lot of different directions. And so I asked them, what do you think I should look toward? And ultimately, every time I would have that conversation, Ayurveda and my experience in some way, shape, or form would come up. And they would say, I don't know what you're going to do, but that's got to be in the middle of it because that is completely your passion. And I thought, okay, I hear what they're hearing. So I wonder why it's my passion. And it was because of the impact. And so it really became, I want more people, I'd say that are like me, but I've changed a lot. So were like me 7 years ago, super corporate. This is all woo-woo. There's no real to it, to get enough information so that they can connect the dots into what they understand to be real, like I did, and utilize some of the principles to be able to get into a healthier space, relying less on Western care. I love Western medicine. I think there's a time and a place for Western medicine. Absolutely. I just think, especially in the US, we've gotten to too many times and too many places and less reliance on what we can do for ourselves because we've been told it doesn't work, and it does. I'm living proof it does. So we created something to be able to help get it to the masses in a language, in a format that I hope that is meaningful to them and that they can understand. Yeah. And we use AI to do it because it's such a vast body of knowledge. So we're leveraging modern technology. But I didn't want to leave Western behind. So I'm really wanting, I feel like I'm kind of on a crusade, no matter what, to get people to understand that Western and Eastern can live side by side, and we can be so much healthier if we truly integrate it like that.
Yeah. It's interesting. Something you said, the way you worded it was like the truth that they know. That could be very deep. It could go in a bunch of different directions. So to me, it sounds like it's not even necessarily just about Eastern that is the limitation, right? Eastern is just some other. It's something that's other than the mainstream, right? Because there could be like a shaman from the New Mexico Native American tribe, you know, something like that, that has some deep gift with healing, right? That's not necessarily something that's easily boxed into the system. So I guess the question is why, because it gets sensitive when we talk about like Western versus Eastern, and it happens on both sides. And then you have this poor CEO guy getting shot from United Healthcare. You know, it's like, we're not here to talk about and vilify people, right? I've been inside, I worked as head of product development for a health insurance company. I know the people that people want to say bad things. We know that health insurance was created as a social program.
And honestly, the company that I worked for, we wanted to help. The intentions were amazing. I agree. I would never vilify anyone. What I want to bring to light is Western medicine is trying, and we have been for a lot of years, to find better ways for preventative medicine. And what I want to be able to do is give another option,
Mm-hmm.
5,000 years of experience, right, on the eastern side of the house, to be able to let folks take a little more control and understand what's occurring. It's funny when I start looking at things. So like in the corporate world, we say mind body, right? Mind body experience.
Mm-hmm.
What we mean by that is keep your physical body healthy, but don't forget your mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in Eastern, it's the same thing. There is no mind body. It's completely impacted on each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think if folks started understanding it's kind of the same, that Western medicine has all of the technology and all of the testing, and they solve things in a different way
Mm-hmm.
than what Eastern does. They use the more traditional, many times less invasive, more natural, that kind of. But we're still trying to get into a healthier being. So that's what I'm trying to do, is to let people understand I do not want Western medicine to go anywhere. I built a system so that they marry, not so that Eastern is better or separated or the way to go at all. So I don't think we'd be anywhere without Western medicine. I think it is absolutely critical in some cases. I think we just need to have this as an eye-opening that there are other options for getting into a healthier state. And some of the ways that I have experienced over the last 7 years are so foreign, but worked. I've found that piece of it really exhilarating and interesting too. I'll give you a great example. So, well before I started seeing an Ayurvedic practitioner, he had been diagnosed with Dupuytren's contracture, so a trigger finger. Went to an orthopedist. The guy was like, luckily very conservative. And he was like, look, if you're not having so much pain that you can't take it and you can still function, let's leave it. There's really
Instead of doing surgery on it, right?
He said, there's really nothing I can do other than it's very simple, surgery, but here's what we do. And so my husband was like, no, we're not to that point yet, right? So fast forward a bunch of years, I've been seeing this Ayurvedic practitioner. He's now my business partner, by the way. So I've been seeing him for probably a year and a half or 2 years at that point. And my husband was like, this thing's really starting to hurt me. I guess I'm gonna have to go see that guy. And I was like, for heaven's sakes, would you please at least let him see? Because he's an engineer. He would never really engage before you go under surgery. And he was like, yeah. So one session, he goes in, hits pressure points on his hands. He gives him a couple of stretching exercises. He told him to use like a paraffin wax and then did some castor oil. It's a really simple things. Mm-hmm. I sort of stood on him for 30 days to make sure he did them. But he said at the end of 30 days, let's see where we're at. And he was like 98%. The straightness, no pain, didn't have to have surgery. And so from a claims, I jumped back immediately into my Western mind and went, the claims that we just saved.
Right. The claims dollars, the insurance company having to pay out a claim that a doctor or medical procedure would have been billed for that you 100%. Did at home.
Or the deductible that the person would have paid. And let me just say, I'm not an Ayurvedic practitioner. That was not a prescription for anyone who has any kind of issue. I do not recommend giving up your Western providers. I don't mean to give any kind of medical advice. I'm just telling you what our experience was. But in me knowing his skepticism as well, it was pretty eye-opening to me. He would not have said, oh, gee, this feels better, when it didn't. So again, it was sort of time after time, I watched with a very skeptical eye things happen as a result of something that I would have bet would not have necessarily had any impact. And it was a little shocking and exciting at the same time. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Well, okay. So we're talking about ability to heal that is different than what people think is possible, right? It's different than what people think is possible, and it's different than what people are used to. So here's the question. Why do you think so many people have bad feelings about Western medicine or modern medicine, right? Because I just want to also clarify something for people. It's like, even in the East, countries in the East, even in India, even in China, where these alternative medicines or complementary medicines come from, they still have modern medicine as well. They have the same kinds of modern medical doctors that we have. They may however, have more of a robust traditional medicine infrastructure than we have here in the United States, because ours is really not structured. It all happens kind of like underground. And, people like me aren't included in the system. Acupuncturists are more now, and chiropractors and things like that. But there's a lot of people who are really not necessarily feeling or that they're included in the system, or that they're able to, like, I rarely get referrals from doctors, to be honest, and so it's tricky. Why do you think modern medicine is getting this bad rap?
Well, so a couple of reasons. I think some of it is good or bad. If there's not data to back it up, then carriers are not going to want to cover a service because there's no proof of efficacy, and insurance is expensive enough, right? So to cover benefits for something that does not have a proven track record, that's a big leap, which is why it took so long for acupuncture to come in as, under some carriers, as an actual covered benefit.
Can you explain what a proven track record is?
Yeah. So in the healthcare industry, what they want to see are treatments that have an efficacy rate that led to successful patient outcomes, right? Which makes sense and is really kind of hard to debate. If they're going to use the funds to pay for something, and those funds come from the premium that people are paying, so it's your money, right? So if they're going to use those funds to pay for something, they want to make sure that, especially in broad category, what they're paying for is effective. They wouldn't want to pay for something and nobody ever gets better from it. The problem, flip side of that is there's very few studies that have been done on some of the Eastern practices. And some of the Eastern practices in other countries are not allowed in this country, and we would see them as quite dramatic.
Yeah.
Even if they are effective, they would not be socially accepted as something that we would say, yes, I'll go do that, right?
Yeah.
So there's the friction there between Western medicine accepting it as effective when there's nothing to prove to them that it's effective, and more likely than not, they haven't had any personal experience with it.
Right.
And in all honesty, that's what has driven me. I've actually had the personal experience, or I'd be in the same boat going, you want to tell me from my wrist I'm had back surgeries? How is that possible?
To be clear, not all Ayurvedic practitioners do have clairvoyance.
Actually, that was off of the pulse. So
yeah,
he certainly does have abilities, I think, above and beyond. So I agree that he's an extreme, perhaps, but I was lucky. Universe put everything together how it was supposed to go together. So anyway, the data studies is one piece. That I think is probably the biggest piece as to why Western does not, for instance, refer over very often, is they really do not have anything that widespread tells them this is effective. In all honesty, I think acupuncture has become covered because of demand. Because employees have said to large group employers, we want this covered, and large group employers had said to carriers, we want it covered.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And so the beauty of that is, if you now look at statistically the demand that is starting to rise up, there is a huge growing demand for more natural solutions.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking at a statistic the other day about DOs in comparison to MDs. And I think the growth was something like, gosh, I'm probably going to get this wrong, 69% increase in DO applications into school, and like an 18 in MD. And so what a DO is, in case, because honestly, a lot of folks I talk to have never even heard.
Don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. It is a medically licensed physician, just like an MD. They just have some additional training. It's a doctor of osteopathy as opposed to an MD as a doctor of allopathy. Mm-hmm. And so they have additional training that is more along the lines of chiropractic. It's more about musculoskeletal. And I'm oversimplified that. But my point to that was they are an AMA license, just like an MD, can prescribe drugs, can do everything an MD can do.
Yeah.
But they do natural and least invasive first. Doesn't mean they're not going to escalate.
I have had DOs refer to me. I've had more DOs refer to me than MDs.
Than MDs, right.
Yeah.
But the demand is increasing so much that the enrollment, I think there's 38 universities in the US that do DO degrees. The enrollment has gone up considerably because the demand of American citizens is going up so much because they're tired of just poking a pill. I read some statistic the other day that telehealth, which is becoming more and more popular because of COVID and people realizing, hey, this is pretty easy, but they prescribe usually an antibiotic 85% of the time.
Right.
85% of the time.
Yeah.
That's shocking.
And nutritionists aren't utilized, and you know that so much of it is due to diet. And okay, so there are the bad feelings that people have about modern medicine. It's not everybody. I mean, a lot of people are very grateful to have modern medicine, to have access to the types of tests that tell them things that, you know, special people can't touch their arm and tell them the same, you know, I mean, so I think a lot of people do have gratitude. And at the same time, it's like your healthcare system has to match the values of the people that it serves. And what I'm hearing you say is that the people want acupuncture. The people want more complementary and alternative treatments for prevention and possibly even other things, right? Certainly for prevention, because if you look at, you know, if I've looked at medical codes, you know, the CP, you know, all the medical codes and ICD codes and everything, and I'm just like, something listed under preventive, and I'll be like, that's not really preventive. The stuff that's really preventive is the stuff that you do at home, you know, which you know, because you've done all this wellness program development and stuff. And it was interesting. One of the things that you said earlier, which was about, you know, I know how to be like the person who helps things comply with HR and stuff like that. You know, think about the wellness programs today. They're really geared toward people that have very little self-care practices. They're really or knowledge. They're developed toward, from a self-awareness perspective and body awareness perspective, they are geared toward the lowest common denominator. But there are a lot of people who now have been doing yoga, have been meditating, have been biohacking, you know, all kinds of things where they want to learn more, or trying out intermittent fasting, just anybody who's kind of like testing things out on their body.
Right.
That,
which I love. I will say, though, knowledge, I think, is a big piece of it, too. So I had a fellow that I used to work with, incredibly intelligent, phenomenal leader. Couldn't say better things about him. He had a very, very, at the time, stressful life going. And so I said to him one day, again, super intelligent. This has nothing to do with intelligence. This is all about just, I think, exposure.
Totally. Right? And even when I say lowest common denominator, I don't mean that to like, oh, all the dumb people. No, it's like, it's literally about level of self-knowledge and self-awareness and self-discipline.
Right. 100%. I'm with you 100%. So I said to him, I really wish you would just try meditating, like 10 minutes, doesn't even have to be that long. And he said, I do meditate sometimes. And I was like, you do? He was like, yeah, I will go in a quiet room and sit down and just plan out my day. And I went, that's day planning. That's not meditation. So some of it is even, they want to do great. They think they're doing great, but you know what? That didn't work for me. Well, you aren't actually meditating. Yeah. Or we'll do things like in the Western corporate world, we have all of these studies about how cortisol impacts a disease state on the body, right? And then we have all of these other studies that show what stress levels do to the level of your cortisol in your body. But when someone comes into a physician's office and they present with high levels of cortisol that are stress related, they will either, and I don't want to get slammed for this, so have a prescription given to them, or in the best case scenario, be told you need to try some relaxation techniques, or you need to meditate, or you need to do yoga, but there's no training or understanding or follow-up to really help that person get there. And so in the Western side of the house or in the corporate world.
Same thing with nutritionists and
Right,
metabolic issues and all that. Yeah.
Go lose weight and eat better. And nobody truly understands because there's so much information out there.
Mm-hmm.
And some of it might apply to you and your body chemistry. Some of it may be the absolute wrong thing to do. So, but we don't make the connection between high levels of cortisol and reducing stress. Like we don't fully give them the tools to be able to get that done
in the system. So is that why so I, as the president of an organization where you have these practitioners that, have trained, and some of them have these like amazing, miraculous powers like your guy. And, I mean, I hear different opinions about what people want. I hear like, oh yeah, we want to be in the system. We want to get paid. We want to take insurance. Like that's like one end of a spectrum. It's like, I can't do this as a living unless that happens. And I will tell you, after trying to practice Ayurveda for 10 years, it is freaking hard.
Yeah. And so I think we have to, I say we, I'm on the outskirts of that industry, right?
Yeah.
I think there has to be baby steps. And again, in order to get, just like acupuncture, to the point where a carrier might cover that benefit, there has to be demand or there has to be true studies to prove out an ROI and efficacy.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, why I was put in the position that I was. That's how my mind works, is how do I set something up so that as it's being used, people, number one, get baby stepped in, because we can't start by going, honestly, I think the majority of the people, if we were able to read a pulse and tell them what was going on, we'd freak them out and they'd be, I'm out. So we have to sort of baby step and meet them where they are and get them to understand why it's not so foreign and start trying some things so they'll try more things. Homeopathics was one that I hate to say I probably discredited the most because I just didn't, there was no science to, like I just couldn't find any. So I'll tell you my experience with it. Ultimately, I had my Ayurvedic practitioner kept me out of pain with my hips for about 2 years, but I had no function because when I finally went and got x-rayed, they were bone on bone. So I literally, they would lock. Like I couldn't hardly do anything. I couldn't have ridden a bike if I'd had to. So I chose to have bilateral hip replacement. First surgery, I was bruised from my knee to my hip. And I said something complaining about it. And he said, "Where's your arnica?" And I was like, kind of forgot that.
Arnica, the herbal pain reliever, analgesic. And
it's also what some of the surgeons who do facelifts recommend. So it's not like I just never heard that before.
Yeah.
Surgery, I took it like I was supposed to for the 24 or 48, whatever it was, hours that he told me to do. 0 bruising. And I was like, how is that even possible from this quarter of a Tic Tac, has no science behind it pill? But it is. Yeah. But it works. And so we have to get to a point where we can marry what we know the results are with enough usage or credible data studies so that the folks who haven't tried it and haven't seen what the results are can feel a comfort level to be able to dive into it and take the woo-woo away. Yeah. It's not. There is a tremendous amount of logic behind why what happens in Ayurveda actually has an impact. There's a tremendous amount, but it's just
I didn't pay her to come on the show, I swear to God. No, but all right. So there's 2 sort of controversial questions, maybe like devil's advocate in a couple ways. All right. So one is, because I hear the voices of all of my colleagues that practice, I hear their voices, and I hear their voices going, we need insurance because we're not in the system. We don't get the same opportunities as other healthcare providers. We can't make a living, et cetera, et cetera. Right. The other side of this is we don't want to be in the system because the system is effed up and we think it's going to make us provide service that's not as good. Whoa, that's super heavy, right? I hear both of those things. So that's the first sort of controversial thing. What do you think about that? How can we avoid wrecking the beautiful history of Ayurveda, the authenticity of Ayurveda, the full potential of
Right.
Ayurveda
Right.
if it joins a system that's highly systematized?
Right. And that is a tricky and really difficult tightrope to walk because the Ayurvedic practitioner who's my partner is a purist. Like he wants to keep it as straight down the line as all of his instructors and teachers over the decades have taught him, right? And I love that and I respect that. And we have done everything we possibly can to keep that. The flip side of that is we have to find a way while not diluting it, because if you dilute it, you dilute the efficacy, with making it available, palatable to people who have never experienced it. And so, again, getting into insurance, I can see both sides of that, honestly, because yes, you could have more clients because their insurance is going to cover it. But I also think if you don't worry about getting into the insurance carriers as covered and the demand increases across the country, like acupuncture.
And you can have healthcare freedom in your state and safe harbor laws, and you can actually practice legally. Because in some states, you can't even practice legally today as an Ayurvedic practitioner.
Right. And I think a lot of great organizations are making some pretty great strides, even as we speak, toward that for sure. But I think if we can get it into a format that is palatable for folks to experience and understand more, and have people like me, who's the biggest skeptic corporate human out there, go, hang on a minute, guys.
Well, maybe your engineer husband.
To it. Yeah.
I think your engineer husband, probably one more degree.
So that kind of process has to happen. It's not going to happen that quick. It is a process, just like acupuncture was a process for there to be a swell of demand. The great thing is that some of these large group employers listen to their employees. They want to give them what it is that they want in benefits. And so
I've actually gone to employee health fairs before as an Ayurvedic practitioner. Now, my in was always because I was a yoga teacher. I don't think that I would have even been in the room because if it was just Ayurveda. This is like 10, 13 years ago even. And I don't think I would have been in the room if people weren't already familiar with yoga. And my friend who's a head of Ayurveda at the Ozer Center, she only has that job because she also is a licensed acupuncturist. So people have some other thing that people are familiar with and it creates trust. And then you're able to sort of bring it to the table. And I was able to, raffle off a consultation and like offer people consultations. And that was amazing. And so I hope more of that, happens with large employers. There's one other question that I think is maybe something that makes it a challenge for the insurance, not necessarily the insurance industry. I don't know. You tell me. Do you think because, all right, Ayurveda, like you said, it can come with a lot lower price tag, the therapies that, because you're doing some stuff at home. Oftentimes you're using herbal medicines. They're not synthesized medicines. They didn't have to go through these insane, clinical trials that cost billions of dollars for pharmaceutical companies to be able to do. So there's just like a lot less money in the herbal medicine field because you're literally like, I can grow some basil in my backyard and use that, or I can grow some ashwagandha or some tulsi or something like that. And food as medicine. So it does come, not all of it, some of it can be very expensive, but a lot of it comes with a lower price tag. Do you think that it makes Ayurveda or other, herbal medicine led traditions less attractive to certain entities in the healthcare space because there's less money involved in the therapeutics and the diagnostics?
Ooh, that's a bomb. Insurance industry and healthcare in general, for the most part, a for-profit industry. So pharmaceuticals are obviously a for-profit industry. by no means do I mean to insinuate that there are folks in there that have incredibly good hearts that just want to do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
And those trials and those protocols that they have to follow to get some of those drugs onto the market is expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So I get it.
And that's why they're willing to invest in the studies. And that's one of the reasons we don't have the studies. Who's going to fund a study on these herbal medicines? Because there's no one's going to be able to make it. Not that no one's going to be able to make money off of it, but it's different, you know?
Yeah, I don't know that that's accurate. I don't know that the studies haven't been done on the Eastern side because there's no money to be made. Because I do think there are some universities and things of that nature that wouldn't profit from the study anyway. I think to this point, and honestly, I really want to be the bridge, at least the catalyst that starts the bridge. I think to this point, there has been such a chasm between, oh, you do Eastern medicine, then you don't do Western, or vice versa. And they beautifully go together. And so I think Western is so pervasive in the US, and it does have a ton of money behind it. And it does have a ton of data and studies behind it.
And it's also incentivized through what's covered, right?
Absolutely, through what's covered. And so you don't want to come out of pocket for stuff. So you want to do things that are covered by your insurance, 100%. And so it has all of that momentum behind it. And there's never, ever been really a moment where we have said, hey, let's look at this. That's really what I wish to do. And it's not going to be perfect to start. But I think if we can get more folks to understand what it really is and to get some universities now engaged, if we can create a platform that allows us to be able to gather the data that gives us an ability to track it and see the efficacy, then I do think that we can get some entities engaged to get those data studies done. We're tremendously, and again, I say Eastern is tremendously behind Western, but I think the demand right now is behind the natural approach, and everybody is sort of done with pharmaceutical solutions if there are other options.
For certain things, yeah. I mean, you're right, because if you have claims data on an employee population or a public program population or whoever the population is, a population of people, and you have their claims data, you can look at outcomes, you can study the diagnoses, you can study the care that was delivered, and you can study how it turned out. And those of us who are outside of that system, that's one of the reasons that we don't have that kind of an evidence base formed. Yeah. So
you didn't have access to the claims data. So when I worked for the carrier, we had an amazing wellness program, and it was tied to the medical, right? But employer groups still said, can you show me the ROI studies? They still want to see those studies, even when it was tied, right? So we would do just that. We would create cohort reports. So for instance, we would take a 50-year-old woman with a heart disease who was using our system, a 50-year-old woman with a heart disease who was not using our system, and then amplify that, right? Not just one person, but and run cohort reports to see exactly what you're saying. How did these people
went down path A and these people went down path B?
And to look at them demographically, they should be exactly the same. But these fared better by X percentage than what this group did. And so that's what we have to be able to get to. But to this point, we've never put it into a position to be accessible and palatable so that large group employers can implement it. And then we can actually take that claims data and run it to see. So,
you're making me realize the challenge as well with concierge medicine as well. So because a lot of doctors are leaving that structure if they want to be able to practice differently, free from, the limitations and incentives of the system, then, I mean, their data is not getting captured either, is it? To determine.
Not in that manner. I mean, they'd still... not likely in that manner. I don't say none of them, but not likely in that manner. No.
Yeah. So basically the evidence base then becomes, sort of limited by the system itself, which is super interesting unless people are like cool and doing pilots and stuff, which we hope happens. Gosh, don't you feel like we could talk about this for 3 more days? I know we will more, for sure. And, just thank you so much for everything that you've shared and for being a champion for alternative medicines and specifically also for Ayurveda because of your personal experience with it. And like you said, it's probably just more people have to experience it and more people need to give it a shot. And I know we're working on some ways to contribute to the evidence base more because there is an evidence base out there. I just don't think we've been very good at documenting it and sharing it. And I think that's probably a huge industry issue. Okay. So back to your personal experience with yourself, your health, right? All the things that you've learned through all the weird things you've been exploring.
Weird's a good word.
Because you do something in the mainstream is not functioning optimally. People have to do things that make them feel really weird. I mean, I get it. I felt like I had to leave this mainstream structure. I went to grad school on an ashram.
Wow.
I studied Ayurveda living part-time on an ashram. When you want to be able to see things and do things differently, it's hard to do it in the system. Sometimes you just have to see that a different way is possible.
Right.
So
I would not go that extreme. That's I'm still in my home.
No, I am too. I'm back in my home, and I never was there like full time. Yeah. And my dad did think I joined a cult for sure. And I did. My father called me when I was away at school once and said, "Hello, if you don't call me back, I'm coming to pick you up there."
Oh my goodness.
That's a story in and of itself. Okay. So final question for you here today. What does the wisdom of the body mean to you?
Wow. Honestly, it is what I have experienced over the last 7 years. I did not realize that if I listened to my body, and you got to learn how to do that. If I listened to my body, it could actually tell me a whole lot more about myself than I ever consciously actually knew.
Oh,
that's pretty deep right there at the end, wasn't it?
Yeah. No, it's great. It's a question that we should all answer for ourselves. I just think there's so much more than what most people dive into on themselves on a daily basis. We are all so busy and we are all so running at full blast that I think, not to say we can't still do all of our jobs. I certainly did, but there is a way to get back and communicate with your body and let it tell you what it needs so that you can be healthier. Yep. We wish that for everybody listening. We wish that for your families, your community. I think, it's a lot going on right now in healthcare in lots of different ways. So, all right. So if people want to learn about, I know you're developing, but like, how do they connect with you? How do they learn about the work you're doing?
Yeah, ozerhealth.com. So we just launched an app. It is AI based. It has a curated library of Ayurvedic knowledge. So you can go on, take a quiz, let it learn you, ask whatever questions that you want, and let it give you recommendations back based on natural, holistic health, mostly Ayurvedic. And then coming very soon, very, very, very soon, hopefully, we are actually going to put live a telehealth option. So you can speak live to one of those magical Ayurvedic practitioners or advanced Ayurvedic practitioner, Ayurvedic health counselor. We've got folks that can help instruct you on pranayama, meditation. We'll have yoga therapists or Western providers that are geared toward making the most natural, least invasive option first before they escalate it if you do need Western health. Yeah. So ozerhealth.com.
Awesome. Jill, thanks so much. I look forward to speaking with you again. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Heather.
If you are embarking on a fertility journey and are ready to have your mind blown about what your body is really capable of and how it's impacted by the environment, then check out my book, The Ayurvedic Guide to Fertility. You can actually download the introduction to the book for free on my website at heathergrzych.com. That's Heather, Grzych.com. Read the intro for free and then buy the rest of this fertility enlightening book pretty much anywhere books are sold. Feeling like there's just not enough time in the day? You're not alone. Many of my clients, like Jessica, come to me overwhelmed, struggling and feeling the effects of aging. After just a few Ayurvedic sessions, Jessica was sleeping better, her digestion was regular, and she felt her vitality again. Ayurveda isn't about adding more to your plate. It's about creating balance so you can make time for what matters. Ready to reset your health and your life? Visit heathergrzych.com and book your consultation today. Thank you for tuning in and dropping in with us today. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. I really want to hear your feedback. To learn more about my work, visit heathergrzych.com. That's Heather, Grzych.com. And meet me here next time on The Wisdom of the Body.